Hello, everyone. So we're Team 3, and today we're going to be presenting to you the former Disney CEO, Bob Iger. I'm Megan Weisner. I'm going to start off talking to you, then we'll go to John. Following him will be Tanner, Ryan, and then Nick will conclude for us. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about Iger's background or history in his position. So from 1994 to 95, he was the ABC television president. He was also president of Capital Cities, and this was up until the Disney acquisition started in 1996. So from 96 to 2005, Iger was former executive chairman for Walt Disney. He became CEO in 2005 and then just recently stepped down in 2020. Iger earned roughly $45 million annually working as CEO. And while he was CEO, he was part of the successes that oversaw the acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, 21st Century Fox, and the expansion of Disneyland in Hong Kong and Shanghai. During Iger's term, Disney revenue increased from $48.4 billion to $257 billion. A lot of this was because of Iger's position, and he really helped Disney grow to what it is today. February 25th of 2020, Iger stepped down and he named Bob Chapek as his successor. So he is now the new CEO of Disney. So as for Iger's leadership style, I'm going to be talking about key points that he mentioned in his book, The Ride of a Lifetime, that were reasons for his success in his leadership style. So I'm going to go through some of the things he said throughout his book. We're going to start with optimism. So for optimism, he says, in a leader, especially in challenging times, it is so vital. Optimism sets a different machine in motion. Especially in difficult moments, the people you lead need to feel confident in your ability to focus on what matters and not to operate from a place of defensiveness and self-preservation. The tone you set as a leader has an enormous effect on the people around you. No one wants to follow a pessimist. The second one is courage. He says, I didn't want to be in the business of playing it safe. I wanted to be in the business of creating possibilities for greatness. All of the lessons I learned in that first year running prime time, the need to be comfortable with failure was the most profound. The third he mentions is focus. Iger often returned to advice when he received from his former boss and mentor Dave Burke. He says, avoid getting into the business of manufacturing trombone oil. You may become the greatest trombone oil manufacturer in the world, but in the end, the world only consumes a few quarts of trombone oil a year. Fourth being decisiveness. Iger says, I've always instinctively felt that long shots aren't usually as long as they seem. Next is curiosity. The path of innovation begins with curiosity, innovate or die, Iger says. Following that is fairness. Iger said, strong leadership embodies the fair and decent treatment of people. Nothing is worse to an organization than a culture of fear. Thoughtfulness, Iger says, it is simply about taking the time to develop informed opinions. On authenticity, Iger says, truth and authenticity breed respect and trust. Next is the relentless pursuit of perfection. This doesn't mean perfectionism at all costs, but it does mean a refusal to accept mediocrity or make excuses for something being good enough. The last one is integrity, and to me, I feel like this is the biggest one out of all 10. Iger says, true integrity, a sense of knowing who you are and being guided by your own clear sense of right and wrong, is a kind of secret leadership weapon. If you trust your own instincts and treat people with respect, the company will come to represent the values you live by. Thank you for listening to my portion of the presentation. Now I'm going to turn it over to John to talk about some of his key success factors.
Thank you, Megan, for clarifying the history and leadership styles of Bob. Now, what I'm going to be talking about is the key takeaways from Iger's success. Now, the first one is the CEO decides on the vision and general direction the company needs to move in. Kind of like a guideline, setting up a culture for what the future business practices need to do in order to be successful. Two, have an optimistic mindset when conducting business processes. What characteristics do you want your employees to follow? What do you want your managers to instill into your employees? Third, be thoughtful in your approach to situations, people, and decisions. You always want to be thoughtful whenever you're thinking about the future future processes that you're going to do within your business whenever you're talking to whoever you're talking to, whether that be subordinates or superiors. Um, and whenever you're working, you just want to be thoughtful in anything that you're doing that could harm or gain for the business. Fourth, give subordinates the proper time to prove their worth to the company. Everybody has a kind of a period where they're learning through the company. How long does it actually take for someone to learn the ins and outs of the company? It can probably take from 6 months to a year, maybe longer. For it depends on the person. So you got to give people time to be able to gel with your company, to be able to learn about the culture, learn about everything that goes from the manufacturing to the customer service, etc. You just everybody has their own timeline of whenever they can um, kind of figure out the company, and you just want to be patient with those employees and not just off their first mistake saying that they're a bad employee. Five, encourage risk taking. Um, Especially in a business, scared money don't make money, as I like to say. So you gotta be a risk taker, whether that be with your suppliers, with your product differentiation, with your marketing. You just got to take risks sometimes in order to get that big payout, and never have the mindset that you are on.
Okay. For the 5 tips of developing a business strategy from Bob, his first tip is dream big. He says that the sky's the limit. You can come up with any idea, and if you work hard on that idea, you can turn it into a business. The second tip is to define your priorities. So his 3 priorities for Disney whenever he was chairman for Disney was to invest most of Disney's capital in high quality branded content, such as creativity. His second was to use technology to make more compelling content and to reach people in more innovating ways. And lastly, his third defining priority was to grow globally and to connect markets around the world. His third tip to developing a business strategy is to sell your vision. Narrowing your priorities to 3 crystalline goals is half the battle to sell your vision, which is what he said, which is probably one of your hardest things to do is to narrow down your strategy, to narrow down your goals to make it so you can actually sell the final vision. Number 4 is to embody your vision, is to just state your strategies to um, then develop it into a well-known, like a better business model. And then your last thing to develop a business strategy is to get feedback. He said getting feedback is important because as much as you're in the capital of your own ship, as much as you're the captain of your own ship, a major part of your job is to allow the people around you to give feedback and just show like things you can improve, things that are good, just so you can see how your business strategy is doing. So those are 5 tips from Bob's business strategies.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm gonna be talking about Iger's 3 tips for a successful negotiation. 1, be candid. 2, be honest and authentic. 3, keep your eyes on the prize. For the first one, being candid, he said basically it's one of his strategies to get deals done quickly, to just be upfront and frank, but to also be truthful. For the second one, to be honest and authentic, an example would be when he first talked to Steve Jobs about acquiring Pixar. He just said to be straightforward about wanting the company and how it was essential for Disney. His honesty softened the negotiation and ultimately got the deal done. For the third one, to be keep your eyes on the prize. Bob approaches negotiation with a desired outcome in mind. He tries to stay focused by being efficient and clever throughout the negotiation and not to let his ego get in the way. The results have been very successful, especially for the company of Disney. Now we're going to transition into Nick for Iger's controversies, and departure.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Nick, and I'm going to be talking about Bob Iger's ethics and what eventually led him to depart from Disney. First, in 2019, a whistleblower leaked information that Disney was inflating $6 billion for the income of corporate executives. It was later found that Bob Iger set benchmarks for himself that would pay him $423 million within 4 years if he reached all of those benchmarks. And also in 2019, Bob Iger was added to the same sexual assault lawsuit as Harvey Weinstein. And with all those things coming out in a relatively short amount of time, the board of directors decided that it would be best to go in a different direction and find a new CEO. And in conclusion, to recap what everybody talked about, Megan discussed Bob Iger's work history and his leadership styles. John talked about his key takeaways for success. Then Tanner talked about his 5 tips to develop a business strategy. Ryan talked about his tips for successful negotiations. And lastly, I talked about his lack of ethics that led to his departure. Thank you.